On average, a person has had conversations with around 80,000 different people in their lifetime. Just by living in such a stimulating world, with so many moments, it can be difficult to pinpoint which moments actually matter. So, when I first started planning this talk, I tried to reflect on moments that truly mattered to me. Initially, I thought of my 11+ exams or GCSEs, as without doing well on those, I wouldn't be here today. And to a degree, those moments have shaped the direction my life has taken. But the more I reflected, the less significant those moments felt. Perhaps the moments that didn't feel important at all, the seemingly small, almost invisible moments in my perspective, were in fact the most influential. This can be explained through economics. A theory called path dependence practically explains that what happens to you today depends not only on what you do today, but on the sequence of things you did before. Paul Pearson, who is one of the most influential economists in this field, explains how early events matter more than later ones, because over time, changing direction becomes increasingly difficult. Importantly, this isn't because alternatives disappear, but rather because the cost of switching increases. The famous example used to illustrate this is the QWERTY keyboard layout. Developed in the 19th century, it was designed to prevent the mechanical arms on a typewriter from jamming by purposefully slowing down the typist. Today, on a modern keyboard, which doesn't have mechanical arms, this isn't a problem. There are an abundance of keyboard layouts which reduce finger movement, increase typing speed, and therefore lower error rates. Hence, they are widely perceived as better than the QWERTY layout. Yet, almost no one uses these layouts. When we investigate why the QWERTY layout is so dominant, it makes perfect sense. Schools taught it. Offices trained workers on it. Companies invested in it. Economists illustrate that switching now would require the retraining of millions of people, as well as redesigning hardware and changing software. So clearly, the cost of switching for both the firm and the consumer is simply too high to be worth switching. Hence, we continue to use the same layout. That's path dependence. Perhaps path dependence applies to our emotions. We often think of emotions as choices. Social media often pushes this narrative, telling us to control our emotions to help us be confident and to avoid overthinking. And at times, these messages can help you adopt a better frame of mind to deal with hardship. But more often than not, I struggle to follow this. And perhaps a better way to view our emotions would be to look at our habits, past experiences, and repeated reactions. In essence, when we consider our emotions, what if we viewed them as path dependent? This would vastly change the way in which we behave, as this would mean that our emotions, perhaps unconsciously, are shaped through a system of choices rather than just an immediate switch. This can be seen in this housing loop. This is a macroeconomic housing loop. House prices increase. Initially, this could be due to any factor, such as low interest rates. Low interest rates make it easier to borrow, consequently increasing the demand for housing. In addition, buyers may rush to buy homes, not because they necessarily need a home, but rather in their belief that housing prices will continue to increase. So, by buying at a present, it will be less expensive. Furthermore, as house prices increase, existing homeowners feel wealthier. This is referred to as the wealth effect. When people feel wealthier, they spend and borrow more. And again, the wealth effect too increases the demand for housing. This is known as a positive feedback loops, which economists describe as a process where the outcomes feed back into the system and strengthen the direction that the loop is currently moving in. There are other theories which link to path dependence too. Keynes came up with the term animal spirits to explain how people are never perfectly rational. Hence, decisions are not only based on factual information, but also on emotions, beliefs, and preset expectations. Going back to the housing example, some people bought houses in their belief that house prices will continue to increase, and banks may have lent because of their high confidence. In both situations, these decisions were partly driven by expectations and confidence rather than being purely data-driven. This idea was extended by Brockway, who argued that expectations and confidence don't simply reset, but are developed through our personal experience. This would mean that animal spirits are path-dependent, as it's influenced by a sequence of our previous decisions. As a result, Brockway argues that confidence level, whether it be an optimistic period or a fearful period, is reinforced with feedback loops. For example, after a recession, confidence level is low. Therefore, firms delay investment. Sometimes, even when governments encourage investment by cutting their interest rates, firms still delay investment due to low confidence, even though it is cheaper to borrow due to the lower interest rates. This validates optimistic beliefs, stating the idea that the US housing market is safe and appreciating. This was seen due to higher incomes and lower interest rates. There was a large demand for housing. As stated, this all accumulated into a sense of institutionalized optimism within our society, as homeowners both had an increased borrowing power and the ability to consume. Keynes stated that the existing state of affairs will continue indefinitely, except insofar as we have specific reasons to expect a change. So, once some sort of convention forms, in this case, house prices usually increase, it becomes an almost baseline understanding for decision makers. Hence, when the actual conditions of the market change, in this case, interest rates rise, there are adverse effects. Firstly, borrowing falls, both due to the inability to borrow due to a low value in equity, but also the insecurity to spend due to shattered confidence. As Keynes states, this all forms that people make decisions based on their beliefs, and once confidence breaks, this has disastrous impacts on the economy. So, when exploring animal spirits and feedback loops, it's clear that they're both inextricably linked to our emotions. Once we understand how these operate, we start to notice them everywhere. In fear, in habits, in confidence, and in the moments that shape our lives. Understanding how these work will perhaps give us a better frame of mind, and perhaps looking or searching for a life-changing moment is misguided. And in this, we miss out on the equally special moments that we experience every single day. And for these moments, we should always be grateful. Thank you.